Could I have your attention, please?
Yesterday, all of your problems were in slope-intercept form already. All you had to do is identify the slope, identify the y-intercept, and then graph it, right? So today we're going to just work on changing our equation because it's not going to be in slope-intercept form, putting it into slope-intercept form so that we can identify the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, sometimes we get there's a hang-up with students on manipulating the equations to getting it to that point. So we're going to just working with the equations today to get them in slope-intercept form. So let's just, on all of these, we are going to be write the slope-intercept form of each. Okay, so in order to get it in slope-intercept form, let's remember slope-intercept form looks like this. And we have one y on it, on one side by itself, everything else on the other side. So what we want to do is work with this equation so that all we have on the left side is y. No 4, no 3x, no 8. All we have is y. So we have to get rid of the x first. And how would we have 3x. What do we need to do to 3x to make it 0x? That would make it 1x. Subtract 3 would give us, subtract 3x would give us 0x on the left. So we are going to subtract 3x from both sides. No more x on the left. We have 4y equals. Now notice that we could write it as 8 minus 3x, but in our slope-intercept form, the x is first. So let's put the x term first, and we'll write it as negative 3x plus 8, because that's a positive 8. And now we're ready to get rid of the 4 because we want it to be 1y, and that's when we want it to be 1, that's when we do our division. So we're going to divide everything by 4, both sides by 4, but because on the right we have 2 terms, we're going to divide each term by 4. Like that. I don't want decimals. I want you to leave it in fraction form because when we graph, it's easier to graph 4 over 5 than it is 0.8. Okay, so this gives us y equals a negative 3/4 x. Make sure x is to the side, not on top, well, not on the bottom anyway. And then 8 over 4 is 2. So we have written it in slope-intercept form. We're not going to graph today. We're just working it to this form, the y equals mx plus b form. Just working it to get to there. Okay, so we want 1y by itself. We always get rid of the x term first. That's going to mean what, Gemma? What are we going to do? Subtract 3x. And that gets rid of the x because 3x minus 3x is, there's no x there. That gives us a negative y equals, remember we want our x term first. And we don't want negative 1y, we want positive 1y. So how can we make that a positive 1y? Divide by negative 1. So we're going to take every term that is separated by an addition or subtraction, and we're going to divide it by a negative 1, which just changes the sign of each of those. So that gives us y equals negative 3 over negative 1 is a positive 3x, and then a positive 3 over negative 1 would be a negative 3. And there we have written that equation in slope-intercept form. Next one. 11x minus 4y equals a negative 24. First step, Caitlin.
You subtract 11x from both sides.
Okay. And that's going to give me what on the left? Gabby, what's on left on the left? Equals what? Good. What do we need to do now, Nolan? Well, we're almost done on the left. We just want it to be y on the left. So, yep, divide everything by a negative 4, each one of these. So that's going to get rid of the 4 there, but we still have y on the left. With the x term, we can't reduce 11 over 4. It's going to stay as 11 over 4. We could rewrite it as a mixed fraction, but for graphing purposes, because that's our slope, it's easier to leave it as an improper fraction. What we can do is reduce the negative over negative. So negative divided by negative just makes it positive. So we're going to write this as 11 fourths x, or 11 over 4 x. And then again here, the positive negative over negative makes it a positive. So 24 over 4 does reduce to a positive 6. So there's our slope-intercept form. Okay, next one, which is D, correct? Okay, so remember slope-intercept form, we want it to be in this form where we have y on one side by itself, x and the intercept on the other side. Okay, so do we have y isolated on this problem already? Yeah, so guess what? We don't have to do any work. It's already in slope-intercept form. We don't have an x, but that's okay. So this actually could be rewritten as y equals 0x minus 3. But certainly that is acceptable to leave it as it is because it's in slope-intercept form. You may want to rewrite it this way so you can identify the slope easier if you have difficulties with that. Okay, let's do another one. I'll let you try this on your own, and then we will see how we'll do 2 more. 2x minus 3y equals a negative 6. So work that out on your own, get it in slope-intercept form, and then we'll talk about it and we'll go over another one. So subtract 2x from both sides, and no more x there. That gives me a negative 3y equals a negative 2x minus 6. Hadley, what do we do now? Divide everything by negative 3. That gets rid of the 3's there. So we have y on the left. Negative over negative is a positive. We can't reduce 2/3, so we're going to leave it as 2/3 x. Negative over negative is positive again. 6 over 3 is 2. Okay. Let's do one more. And it will be 9x plus 5y equals 35. Spark 9x, you said? Okay. So that gives us 5y equals a negative 9x plus 35. Okay, next step, Jarrett. So we get y equals a negative 9/5 x. 35 over 5 is 7. There we go. Okay, so I forgot something that I want you to do on all of these now. Once we get it into this form, I want you to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So we will work our way backwards. Let's start with this one, example F. So what is the slope and what is the y-intercept for this equation? So slope, Camilla, what's the slope on this one? Negative 9 over 5, so let's write that down. Y-intercept, Tessa, what's the y-intercept on this very last one we did? 7. Okay, so I'm going to want you to do all three things. Isolate y, put it in slope-intercept form, and then identify the slope and the y-intercept. Let's go backward to example E. What's your slope and y-intercept here? Tyrese, on example E, what's the slope? 2/3, very good. And what is the y-intercept, Abby? 2. Let's keep moving backwards. Example C. We want the slope and the y-intercept. James, example C, what's our slope going to be?
The slope would be 11 over 4.
Yep. Josiah, y-intercept?
Wait,
On example C.
okay. I want to listen. I'm doing y-intercept.
The y-intercept, yes.
That would be
6. Yep. Good. Let's move on up to example B. Tawny, slope. 3, or some people might write it as 3 over 1. Either way is acceptable. Kimberly, y-intercept. Good. And then we have one more to go over. No, is that it? Where's my, did I erase A? I must have erased A. What was A? Y equals what? Oh, there it is. I don't know what happened. Okay, so our slope on this one, who have I not called on? Trenton, what's the slope? On A? Negative 3 over 4, good. And then the y-intercept, Ilian, what's that? 2, very good. Okay, so your worksheet today is going to be very similar to this. You are going to need to rewrite your equation, put it in slope-intercept form, and then identify the slope and the y-intercept. So 3 answers for each problem, and it's a worksheet.